Senator Susan Collins says she has secured Maine's largest federal award in history. Grace Bradley takes us to Orono to see what that money will be used for.
It was announced Tuesday that through a congressional appropriation bill, Senator Susan Collins secured $45 million for the University of Maine system. Collins calls the funding a game changer for the University of Maine and the future of Maine healthcare, as the money will be used to create a new complex dedicated to health and life sciences.
We are thrilled for so many reasons, very grateful to Senator Collins, and also aware that this lets the University of Maine, together with our partners across the University of Maine system, move forward to do even more to address the challenges of healthcare and rural health issues in the state of Maine. And the most important piece is that this would be part of a complex of facilities and buildings and labs and opportunities for learning that we'll put together across our campus.
This announcement coming just weeks after a study concluded that establishing a medical school on the Orono campus would not be financially feasible. Farini Mundy says a new complex could be the first step in creating a pathway.
The idea of pathways toward being ready to help with rural health care and statewide health care are very important for the University of Maine, and the report does note that the University of Maine would be the institution at which to base a public medical school. So yes, we will be able to think about how those pathways can be built out in the context of this complex of buildings, and we'll be able to imagine being ready if and when the moment comes when we could propose a medical school.
For Farini Mundy, this funding allows UMaine to stay on the cutting edge, addressing current problems as they prepare the next generation of the workforce.
And we have a lot to offer here, particularly relative to the role of technology in healthcare, to the ways in which biomedical engineering can be a part of the future of health, and then, of course, the healthcare professionals that we prepare, like nurses, for the whole state. As those strengths became more apparent, it was clear that we could help address a need that the state faces, and as the land grant, that's always our interest.
Grace Bradley, WABI News, Orono.